My adopted daughter got pregnant by my husband a week before our 40th wedding anniversary. I pretended to know nothing. At the family dinner where they planned to share their miracle, I smiled, passed them mashed potatoes, and let them believe I was still the same trusting woman who had spent 32 years building that home from scratch. What I did next shattered everything they thought they'd stolen from me. I'm glad you're here. Follow my story until the end, and tell me where you're watching from. Because I learned betrayal can happen under any roof, on any street, in any so-called loving family. 3 days before that dinner, my house in suburban Connecticut felt painfully ordinary. Morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen blinds, casting soft golden lines across the marble countertops my husband, Daniel, had insisted we install after his promotion 15 years ago. I stood there in my cotton robe, making blueberry pancakes for our adopted daughter, Lily, just like I had every year on the anniversary of the day we brought her home. She was 8 then, fragile, big brown eyes, a frightened little girl who clung to my hand in a state foster office and whispered, "You won't send me back, will you?" I never did. At 64, I had silver threaded through my auburn hair and laugh lines carved by decades of sacrifice. I had given up my teaching career to help Lily through night terrors, private school struggles, braces, heartbreak, and college applications. I had defended her when neighbors asked why we adopted so late in life. I called her my second chance at motherhood. So when she came downstairs that Tuesday morning wearing Daniel's favorite color, soft emerald green, and he looked at her a second too long over his coffee cup, something cold brushed the back of my neck. Not fear. Recognition. There are moments when a woman knows. Not because she has proof, but because silence changes shape. "Morning, sweetheart," Lily said too brightly, kissing my cheek. Daniel barely looked at me. "Big meeting today," he muttered. But his tie was crooked. Daniel had worn a tie properly for 40 years. Small things. Tiny fractures. I told myself I was imagining it. That grief from aging, from years of holding everyone together, was making me suspicious. But later that afternoon, while folding laundry, I found a hotel receipt in Daniel's blazer pocket. 1 room, 2 guests, champagne breakfast. My hands didn't shake. Not yet. Because deep down, before the tears, before the rage, came something much sharper. Understanding. And by the time they sat me down Friday night to announce Lily's pregnancy, I was already 10 steps ahead. The dining room went so quiet that night, I could hear the grandfather clock in the hallway ticking between breaths. Tick, tick, tick. I had set the table with my wedding china. White porcelain with hand-painted blue flowers around the edges. The same set my mother gave me in 1986, the year Daniel and I bought this house and promised each other forever. Roast chicken sat in the center beside buttered green beans, rosemary potatoes, and the yeast rolls Lily used to beg for as a little girl. Everything looked normal. That was the cruelest part. Lily sat across from me, her hands folded so tightly in her lap I noticed her knuckles had gone pale. At 32, she was beautiful in the polished, effortless way youth often is. Her chestnut hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders, and for one dizzy moment, she looked so much like the little girl I used to tuck into bed that my heart almost overruled my instincts. Almost. Daniel poured himself another glass of red wine. His hand brushed Lily's as he reached for the bottle. A small touch. Too familiar. And suddenly, all those strange little moments from the past year came rushing back, like shattered glass clicking into place. Her laughter lingering too long at his jokes. His sudden interest in helping her with bills. Private conversations that stopped when I entered the room. I had seen it. I just hadn't wanted to name it. "Mom," Lily said softly. "Mom." That word nearly broke me more than what came next. Daniel cleared his throat, but he still wouldn't meet my eyes. "We have something important to tell you." I placed my napkin carefully beside my plate. "Then tell me." Lily looked down first, as though shame might be easier if she didn't. Have to watch my face collapse. "I'm pregnant." The word hung there. Fragile. Deadly. For one impossible second, I actually smiled. Not because I was happy, because my body needed to do something while my soul caught up. "Oh," I said gently. "That's big news." Daniel finally looked at me then, and I saw it. Not guilt. Fear. Because he knew I was waiting. "And who?" I asked, reaching for my water glass with perfectly steady hands. "Is the father?" Lily started crying before either of them spoke. Daniel inhaled sharply, like a coward preparing to survive his own confession. Then my husband of nearly 40 years said the words that should have destroyed me. It's mine. Outside, the wind rattled the dining room windows. Inside, something colder happened. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my glass. I didn't ask why. Because in that moment, as my adopted daughter sobbed and my husband stared at the woman he thought he had broken, I realized something they didn't. They were expecting pain. They were not prepared for silence. So I nodded once, passed Lily the bowl of potatoes, and said the words that made both of them visibly uneasy. Well, I replied, then I suppose we'll need to make some very careful plans. Lily's crying grew louder the moment she realized I wasn't giving them the reaction they had rehearsed. No shouting, no shattered plates, no dramatic collapse, just calm. The kind of calm that makes guilty people nervous. Daniel shifted in his chair, loosening his tie like the room had suddenly become too tight for him. For nearly 4 decades, I had watched that man navigate layoffs, mortgage payments, Lily's rebellious teenage years, and even my breast cancer scare without breaking a sweat. But that night, my silence unsettled him more than anger ever could. Evelyn. He began carefully, using my name the way people do when they know they've detonated something irreversible. Please understand, this wasn't planned. I almost laughed. Not planned. As if betrayal just wandered into a marriage by accident. I picked up my fork and cut a small piece of chicken. My appetite was gone, but dignity sometimes looks like doing the ordinary when your world is splitting in half. How far along? I asked. Lily wiped her mascara-streaked cheeks. 12 weeks. 12 weeks. Long enough for lies to grow roots. Long enough for doctor appointments, whispered phone calls, and secret decisions made under my roof while I watered hydrangeas on the front porch, believing my family was whole. I nodded slowly, doing the math with terrifying ease. 3 months earlier, Daniel had told me he was flying to Chicago for a financial conference. The same week Lily claimed she'd gone to Vermont with friends for a wellness retreat. I remembered waving goodbye to both of them from this very driveway. I remembered trusting them. Funny how memory changes once truth enters the room. I see, I said. Lily leaned forward then, her voice trembling. Mom, we didn't mean for it to happen like this. That word again. Mom. She still wanted motherhood from me while carrying the evidence of its destruction. Daniel finally reached for my hand, but I pulled mine back just enough to force him to feel it. Not rejection, recognition. For the first time, he understood the woman sitting across from him was no longer the wife who made excuses for him. What exactly? I asked, folding my napkin with precise, measured care. Was the plan here? Neither of them answered. Because there it was. The real betrayal wasn't just the affair. It was the expectation. They had expected me to absorb this. To grieve quietly. To eventually help decorate a nursery. To keep their shame inside these walls so their reputations could survive. Then Lily said something that finally exposed how deeply this had already gone. We were hoping, since you always wanted grandchildren, maybe this could still be a blessing. Blessing. I looked at the daughter I had chosen, then at the husband who had vowed to choose me. And in that moment, something inside me didn't break. It hardened. I smiled softly, warmly, even. If that's what you're hoping, I said, then I suggest you both start praying. Because while they were busy preparing me for humiliation, I was already preparing them for consequences. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was heartbroken. Heartbreak is for people still asking why. I lay awake beside the empty space where Daniel should have been, staring at the ceiling fan as it turned in slow, steady circles above me. He had chosen the guest room after dinner. I suppose even cowards need distance once their secrets are spoken aloud. The house sounded different after midnight. Every creak of wood, every whisper of the heater, every memory. 40 years is a long time to build a life. Longer still when you start dismantling it in your mind before sunrise. At 2:14 a.m., I got out of bed, wrapped myself in my cream wool robe, and walked downstairs. The kitchen light over the stove cast a soft amber glow across the counters. I made chamomile tea the way I always had. 1 spoonful of honey, no sugar. My hands never shook. That was what surprised me most. I thought betrayal like this would feel like drowning. Instead, it felt like clarity. I sat at the breakfast nook and looked out over the backyard where Lily used to chase fireflies in pink rubber rain boots. She was 9 when Daniel built her that wooden swing set with the yellow slide. 11 when we spent 2 winters helping her catch up in school because trauma had stolen so much of her childhood. 16 when I sat outside her bedroom door all night after her first real heartbreak. I had loved her through every version of herself. And somewhere along the way, she learned that love could be used like a weapon. By morning, I stopped asking myself when it started. Because the signs had been there. Daniel buying Lily a reliable, used Lexus after college, even though we'd agreed she needed boundaries. Lily moving back home at 29, just until she figured things out. The late-night wine conversations. Inside jokes I wasn't part of. The way Daniel had started calling her kiddo again, his voice softer than fatherly, though I'd buried that discomfort each time it surfaced. Women know. We simply talk ourselves out of knowing when truth threatens everything. At 6 a.m., Daniel came downstairs wearing yesterday's guilt on his face. "Evelyn," he said quietly, "I never meant to hurt you." I looked up from my tea. For years, I had been his wife, his excuse maker, his home. That morning, I was simply the woman holding the truth. "You didn't mean to hurt me?" I asked. He nodded, eyes red, though whether from shame or sleeplessness, I couldn't tell. I gave him a small, polite smile. "Daniel, you didn't accidentally forget our anniversary." His face fell. "You didn't mistakenly sleep with our daughter." I let that word sit there. Daughter. Because if he was going to destroy this family, I was going to make sure he heard exactly what he had destroyed. Then I stood, placed my teacup in the sink, and delivered the first sentence of the rest of his life. "Call your lawyer," I said. "I'll be calling mine." And for the first time since Friday night, Daniel looked afraid. By noon, I was sitting in a leather chair across from Margaret Holloway, the only divorce attorney in Fairfield County whose name made wealthy men nervous. She was 71, sharp as cut glass, and wore pearl earrings that looked inherited rather than purchased. Women like Margaret didn't waste words, and after 43 minutes in her office, neither did I. "Let me be clear," she said, sliding her reading glasses down slightly as she reviewed the trust Daniel and I had updated 8 years ago. "Your husband may have betrayed his marriage, but financially, he's in far more danger than he realizes." For the first time all weekend, I felt something dangerously close to peace. Not joy, not revenge, just balance. Because while Daniel had been busy destroying his legacy in hotel rooms and whispered lies, he had apparently forgotten one very important detail. The house. This house, our 5-bedroom colonial with a wraparound porch, the rose garden, and the lake access, had been inherited from my mother's side 3 years before I ever met him. It was mine. Always had been. He had helped renovate it, decorate it, expand the kitchen. But legally, mine. Margaret continued flipping pages. "And your adoption paperwork with Lily," she paused. I stiffened. "What about it?" She looked at me carefully, not unkindly. "You legally adopted her as your daughter." Daniel did not. I blinked. For 32 years, I had assumed we both had. But back then, Daniel's corporate transfer to Singapore delayed the final co-adoption filing. We told ourselves we'd update the paperwork once life settled down. Somehow, between promotions, school tuition, and ordinary family chaos, we never did. He'd signed temporary guardianship documents, attended ceremonies, smiled for photos. Yet he had never finalized co-adoption after a business transfer delayed the process. And somehow, we never corrected it. Lily was my legal child, not his. The room went very still. I stared at Margaret, certain I'd misheard her. "Are you telling me," I said slowly, "that the man who got my adopted daughter pregnant," Margaret's expression never changed, "was not legally her father?" I closed my eyes. Not from relief. From horror. Because somehow, against all odds, the truth had become even uglier than betrayal. Margaret folded her hands. "This changes everything." And she was right. Because Daniel hadn't just detonated our marriage. He had exposed himself to a kind of public disgrace that his country club memberships, charity boards, and polished reputation would never survive. I thought of Lily then. Of the little girl with skin knees. The teenager who cried when boys broke her heart. The woman now carrying a child conceived in deception, selfishness, and moral collapse. For one fragile moment, I almost broke. Almost. Then Margaret handed me a legal pad. "We can file immediately," she said. "Asset protection, removal from residence, emergency trust revision." "And Evelyn," I looked up. "If there are family announcements planned," she said evenly, "I strongly advise you not to stop them." I understood instantly. Baby shower. Church reveal. Social media. They were preparing celebration. Margaret was offering strategy. So I signed every document. One after another. My pen moved steadily across each page, the same way I used to sign permission slips and birthday cards and school tuition checks. Only this time, I wasn't protecting my family. I was protecting myself from it. And as I walked back to my car beneath the cold Connecticut sun, I finally allowed myself one quiet, terrifying truth. They thought they were rewriting my life. What they had really done was hand me the ending. When I got home, Lily was sitting at my kitchen island eating Greek yogurt from one of my porcelain ramekins like she still belonged there. Like Saturday night had been a difficult conversation instead of a moral landslide. She looked up when I walked in, her swollen eyes carefully softened with concealer, her voice hesitant in the way people sound when they know forgiveness is unlikely but convenience still matters. Mom, I was hoping we could talk. I set my purse down gently on the counter. For 32 years, I had responded to that word like instinct. Mom meant scraped knees, piano recitals, college essays, fevers at 2 a.m. Now it sounded different. Strategic. I smiled faintly. Of course. Her shoulders relaxed. That was her first mistake. Daniel appeared moments later, freshly showered, wearing the blue cashmere sweater I bought him last Christmas. The sight of it almost made me laugh. Men really do believe clean laundry can disguise dirty souls. We've been thinking, he began, slipping too easily into that familiar corporate tone he used in boardrooms and charity meetings, about how to move forward in the healthiest way possible. Healthiest? As though betrayal was now a wellness plan. I poured myself coffee before answering. Colombian roast. 2 creams. No sugar. Routine, I was learning, unsettles people when they expect collapse. And what? I asked, stirring slowly. Does that look like? Lily glanced at Daniel before speaking. We know this is unconventional. Unconventional. Not devastating. Not grotesque. Just unconventional. But we were thinking maybe we could all work together, she said carefully. For the baby. There it was. Not apology. Expectation. Daniel stepped closer. You've always wanted to be a grandmother. I looked at him then. Really looked. At 66, Daniel still had the silver temples and practiced smile that once made me feel safe. But standing there in my inherited kitchen, asking me to emotionally renovate the ruins he created, he looked like a stranger wearing my husband's face. So let me understand, I said quietly. Neither of them interrupted. You want me to stay silent while my husband fathers a child with my daughter, and then help raise that baby so neither of you feels uncomfortable? Lily burst into tears. Daniel sighed like I was being difficult. Difficult. After everything, that nearly impressed me. Evelyn, he said, it's complicated. No, I replied, taking a slow sip of coffee. Complicated is tax law. This is character. Silence. Heavy. Immediate. Then Lily said the one thing that erased whatever fragile mercy I still had left. You always said family is family, no matter what. I actually nodded. Because she was right. I had said that. Back when family meant loyalty. Protection. Sacrifice. Not seduction and betrayal under my roof. So I walked to the drawer beside the refrigerator, pulled out a neatly folded stack of papers, and placed them on the counter between us. Daniel frowned. Lily stopped crying. What's this? He asked. My smile was calm enough to frighten them. Temporary occupancy terms, I said. You both have 14 days. Daniel went pale. Lily whispered. You're kicking me out? I held her gaze longer than she expected. No, I said softly. I'm correcting my mistake. And for the first time since this nightmare began, neither of them had a single word to say. Daniel lasted exactly 6 hours before anger replaced shock. By dinner, he was no longer standing in my kitchen like a remorseful husband. He was pacing the living room like a man trying to calculate how much of his life was slipping through his fingers. This is insane, he snapped, running both hands through his silver hair. You can't seriously expect Lily to leave in her condition. Condition, not betrayal, not accountability. Pregnancy had already become their shield. I sat in my late mother's wingback chair by the fireplace, reviewing trust amendments Margaret's office had couriered over that afternoon. The irony was almost poetic. Daniel was unraveling in the very room my family had owned 27 years before his name ever appeared on a utility bill. I expect, I said calmly, without looking up, both of you to respect the legal owner of this home. Lily sat curled on the sofa, wrapped in the cashmere throw I'd knitted during her sophomore year at Boston College. She looked smaller somehow. Not innocent, just smaller. "Mom, please," she whispered. "I have nowhere else right now." That almost reached me. Almost. But then I remembered being 8 months pregnant with my first son, painting nursery walls myself while Daniel worked late. I remembered sacrificing jewelry to cover tuition. I remembered every time motherhood had required me to survive discomfort without destroying someone else to ease it. Women like me had always found a way. Lily could too. "You should have thought about that," I replied. Before confusing love with permission, Daniel stopped pacing. "So that's it," he barked. 40 years, and you're just throwing me away?" I finally looked up then. Really looked. At the man who had betrayed his wife, corrupted his adopted daughter, and still somehow believed himself abandoned. "Daniel," I said quietly, "I'm not throwing you away." My voice was so even, Lily started crying before I finished. "I'm returning what was never worthy of keeping." The room went silent. I watched those words land. Daniel's face shifted, not guilt, not sorrow. Humiliation. Good. Then came the knock. 3 sharp taps at the front door. Margaret's courier. Right on time. I stood, smoothed my cream blouse, and accepted the envelope personally. Inside were copies of the revised trust, emergency property protections, and one particularly devastating document. A formal notice revoking Lily's inheritance disbursement until further review under temporary suspension pending review under family trust violation clauses. My hands were steady as I placed the papers on the coffee table. Lily stared down first. "What does this mean?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "It means," I said, "that being my daughter was never just a title." Tears spilled faster now. "You taught me right from wrong. You knew better." Daniel grabbed the pages, scanning them wildly. "You can't do this." I almost smiled. "Oh, I already did." Then I delivered the truth they had been too arrogant to consider. "The baby shower invitations you mailed yesterday?" Both of them froze. "Yes, I knew about those too. Country club ballroom. 70 guests. Gold lettering. A new chapter." I folded my hands in my lap. "Don't cancel it," I said. Margaret, practical as ever, had already prepared certified copies of every filing. Not for spectacle, but because public lies sometimes require public truth. Lily blinked through tears. "What?" "Keep every reservation." Daniel stared at me like he no longer recognized the woman he married. That made 2 of us. Because I wasn't planning to stop their celebration. I was planning to attend it. The baby shower was scheduled for the following Saturday at the Fairfield Hills Country Club. Of course it was. Lily had always loved appearances. Soft ivory roses. Gold ribbon. Imported macarons. A string quartet near the marble fountain. She wasn't planning a humble gathering for nervous first-time parents. She was staging redemption. By Wednesday, the invitations had already flooded social media. Celebrating baby Harper, a new beginning. A new beginning. I stared at those words on my phone while sitting in the sunroom Daniel once called my peace corner. And for the first time in weeks, I laughed out loud. Not because it was funny, because arrogance really does make people careless. Harper. They had already chosen a last name. Daniels. As though marriage vows, legal filings, and public shame were all minor inconveniences compared to matching monogram nursery blankets. I clicked attending. Then I called my hairstylist. If I was going to watch my family attempt to rewrite history in front of Fairfield's wealthiest wives and sharpest gossips, I intended to look unforgettable. By Saturday morning, I was wearing emerald silk, the same color Lily had worn the day I first noticed her looking at my husband too comfortably. My pearl necklace rested against my collarbone. My mother's bracelet circled my wrist. Armor doesn't always clang. Sometimes it shines. When I arrived, the ballroom looked exactly as expected. Crystal chandeliers, white linen, champagne towers, and oversized gold letters spelling Baby Harper near the stage. Women I'd shared fundraisers with for 20 years turned to stare. Some smiled too quickly. Others looked away. News travels fast in towns like Fairfield, but scandal always travels faster when people are still. Pretending it's a misunderstanding. Lily stood near the gift table in a flowing cream maternity dress, one hand protectively resting on her stomach like innocence could be performed. Daniel hovered beside her in a navy suit, greeting guests with the strained smile of a man trying to outrest disgrace. Then they saw me. I watched panic flash across Lily's face before she replaced it with brittle optimism. Mom, she said, approaching carefully, you came. I kissed her cheek. Lightly. Of course, I said. I wouldn't miss family. Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice. Evelyn, please. Let's just get through today. I looked at him with such calm politeness that he actually faltered. Oh, Daniel, I said softly. I fully intend to. Then I took my seat. Front row. Exactly where the mother of the woman being celebrated belonged. For the first hour, I said nothing. I smiled during the games. Clapped politely during speeches. Accepted sideways glances with practiced grace. I let them grow comfortable. That was the important part. Because public humiliation works best when people first convince themselves they're safe. Then came the toast. Lily's best friend, Amanda, tapped her champagne flute and beamed. Before dessert, she announced, Evelyn, as Lily's mother, would you like to say a few words? The room erupted in approving murmurs. Perfect. I rose slowly, smoothing my dress. Daniel's face drained of color. Lily stopped breathing. And as 70 elegantly dressed guests turned toward me beneath glittering chandeliers, I picked up the microphone, smiled, and finally decided it was time to give them the new beginning they deserved. I took the microphone with the same steady hand I'd once used to hold Lily's tiny fingers crossing kindergarten parking lots. Funny, how the hand that raises someone can also be the one that finally lets go. Thank you, Amanda, I said warmly, my voice carrying effortlessly through crystal and candlelight. And thank you all for being here today to celebrate family. A few guests smiled. A few shifted, because tone matters. And women my age learned that the difference between grace and warning is often just one pause too long. I turned toward Lily first. She looked radiant on the outside. Cream dress, soft curls, carefully painted hope. But beneath all that, I saw fear. Then Daniel, my husband of nearly 40 years, standing beside the woman we adopted. The child I had once rocked through nightmares. I smiled wider. For those of you who don't know, I began. Lily came into my life when she was 8 years old. Soft murmurs. Nods. Sympathy. Good. I chose her. I continued. I loved her. I protected her. I gave her my name, my home, my trust, and every piece of my heart a mother could give. Lily's chin trembled. Daniel took one step forward. Too late. And Daniel, I said, turning to him with elegant calm, my husband promised before God, our families, and this very community to honor that home. The ballroom had gone so quiet, even the string quartet stopped. Then I reached into my handbag, slowly, deliberately, and removed 3 envelopes. 1 white, 1 manila, 1 gold. I brought gifts too, I said. Nervous laughter flickered and died. I lifted the white envelope first. This, I said, handing it to Daniel, is your divorce filing. Gasps. Sharp. Immediate. Daniel whispered my name like a prayer arriving too late. I didn't stop. I held up the manila envelope. This, I said, placing it in Lily's shaking hands, is formal notice that you have been removed from my will pending permanent review. Someone near the back actually sat down too hard. Then came the gold envelope. The prettiest one. I turned to the crowd. And this, my voice never cracked, is a copy of legal confirmation that Daniel never completed Lily's adoption. Silence. No one moved. No one breathed. I let the truth settle exactly where appearances had lived moments before. He was not her legal father, I said clearly, which means this was not a tragic mistake of blurred boundaries. I looked directly at Daniel. This was a choice. Lily broke first. Mom, please, no, I said, calm enough to freeze fire. You don't get to call me that here. The room shattered into whispers. Country club women covered mouths. Board members stared. Phones appeared. Because in Fairfield, scandal wasn't the sin. Public proof was. Daniel reached for my arm. I stepped back. Do not, I said quietly, touch the woman whose life you tried to turn into your cover story. Then I placed the final document on the gift table beneath a tower of pastel-wrapped presents. Property removal orders. 14 days. Signed. Filed. Enforceable. I do wish the baby health, I said, looking at Lily one final time. Children should never pay for adult selfishness. Tears streamed down her face. But mine never came, because grief had already left me. All that remained now was consequence. I handed Amanda the microphone, smoothed my emerald dress, and walked out of that ballroom while 70 people sat trapped between gossip and the undeniable collapse of everything Lily and Daniel thought they could disguise. By Monday morning, Fairfield had done what towns like Fairfield do best. It had chosen sides over brunch. My phone rang 36 times before 9 a.m. Church friends, charity board members, two of Daniel's business partners, even my former tennis doubles partner, Patricia, who had ignored my hip surgery 3 years ago but suddenly felt deeply concerned. I answered none of them. I was too busy changing the locks. By 8:30, a licensed locksmith was replacing every exterior keyhole on the house my mother left me. Front door, back patio, garage entry. Even the wine cellar Daniel had bragged about as though imported Cabernet somehow made him sophisticated. I stood there in navy slacks and a cashmere sweater, coffee in hand, while brass deadbolts clicked into place one by one. It sounded like peace. Inside, movers hired by Margaret's office carefully boxed Daniel's belongings from the guest room. Italian loafers, monogrammed cufflinks, golf trophies, 40 years of curated masculinity, reduced to labeled cartons. Lily's things were harder. Not legally. Emotionally. Her old ballet slippers were still in the attic. Her college graduation photo still sat on my hallway table. A ceramic mug that read World's Best MOM still rested beside my coffee maker. I packed that one myself. Not because I wanted to keep it. Because some lies deserve a proper ending. At 11:12 a.m., Daniel arrived. Not alone. Lily sat in the passenger seat, oversized sunglasses hiding what shame could not. When Daniel saw the movers, his face darkened. "You've got to be kidding me." No. What was left of my marriage had been the joke. I opened the front door before he could pound on it. "Your boxes are in the driveway," I said. Lily stepped out slowly, one hand on her stomach, the other clutching a designer handbag I had bought her last Christmas. "Mom," she whispered. I held up one hand. "No," she froze. Not because I raised my voice. Because I finally stopped giving her access to softness. Daniel tried a different strategy then, the wounded husband. "Evelyn, enough. You've embarrassed us. Haven't you made your point?" Us. I almost admired the instinct. Even now, he wanted unity when consequences arrived. I stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind me. For decades, that porch had been where I waved goodbye to first days of school, welcomed neighbors, watered geraniums. Today, it became a border. "I didn't embarrass you," I said evenly. "I revealed you." Lily started crying again. Real tears this time. "I made a mistake." I looked at her for a very long moment. "No," I said softly. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary." My eyes shifted to Daniel. This was betrayal repeated enough times to become a plan. Neither of them spoke, because there was nothing left to defend. Then Daniel noticed the final envelope taped neatly to the largest box. "What is that?" "Your forwarding packet," I said. Inside were copies of legal filings, temporary removal orders, financial separation notices, and brochures. Affordable extended stay hotels, prenatal counseling centers, entry-level apartment listings. Because cruelty was never my goal. Reality was. "You'll be fine," I said, with a calm they had once mistaken for weakness. "Just not here." Then I stepped back inside my home, and closed the door while they stood on the wrong side of it for the very first time. The first morning after they were gone, I woke up before sunrise out of habit. For nearly 40 years, I had been the first one awake. Coffee brewing by 6 o'clock. Daniel's vitamins lined beside his toast. Lily's school lunches, then college. Care packages, then temporary guest room linens when adulthood somehow kept failing her. Caregiving had become muscle memory. So when I walked downstairs that Tuesday and found silence instead of responsibility, I didn't know what to do with my hands. The house was still. No television humming in the den. No Lily singing absent-mindedly while curling her hair. No Daniel pretending to read financial news while avoiding real conversation. Just morning light spilling across polished hardwood floors. And me. At first, the quiet felt enormous. Then sacred. I made coffee for one. Not in the oversized family carafe. Just one cup. French roast. Fresh grounds. Cinnamon creamer. I carried it to the back porch wrapped in my robe and sat facing the lake behind the property. Early October had begun painting Connecticut gold and amber. The maple trees swayed gently, their leaves falling without apology. For the first time in decades, I understood them. Some things let go because they must, not because they want to. Over the next few weeks, Fairfield did what scandal always forces people to do. Reveal themselves. Some women avoided me at church, as though betrayal were contagious. Others suddenly admired my strength, which I found amusing considering most of them had once encouraged silence for the sake of appearances. But then there were the unexpected ones. The widow from my book club who dropped off homemade lasagna. My old teaching colleague who mailed me a note that simply read, "You are not what they did to you." And Margaret, of course, who finalized my divorce with surgical precision and a bottle of expensive champagne. Daniel, I heard, was renting a furnished condo 20 minutes away. Lily moved in 2 weeks later after social media turned cruel and her friends grew inconveniently honest. I did not call, not because I stopped caring, because sometimes caring looks like refusing to participate in someone's self-destruction. Then one rainy Thursday, a package arrived. No return address. Inside was a framed photo of Lily at age 8 on adoption day. Missing front tooth, oversized sneakers, her small hand gripping mine like I was safety itself. Beneath it was a handwritten note. I don't expect forgiveness, but I finally understand what I destroyed. Lily, I sat with that note for a long time. Long enough to cry. Not for Daniel, not even for the scandal, but for that little girl. The one I had loved before ambition, attention, and broken boundaries turned her into someone I barely recognized. I placed the photo in a drawer. Not displayed, not discarded. Some grief doesn't need an audience. It just needs somewhere honest to live. By winter, I reopened parts of myself I thought were gone forever. I returned to substitute teaching twice a week, joined a women's estate literacy group, redesigned the guest room into a reading studio with pale blue walls and floor-to-ceiling shelves. I was no longer building a home for people who used me. I was finally building one for peace. And slowly, beautifully, my life stopped feeling like aftermath. It started feeling like mine again. Spring came quietly to Connecticut that year. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Just little things. The hydrangeas bloomed again beneath my kitchen window. The same bushes I had nearly forgotten to prune the autumn Daniel left. Morning sunlight returned to the breakfast nook in softer, kinder ways. Even the house itself seemed to exhale, as though it, too, had survived something unspeakable and finally understood it was safe. By April, I was 65, and for the first time in decades, I celebrated my birthday exactly how I wanted. No formal dining table, no polished silver, no exhausting performance of family perfection. Just 6 women on my back porch. Margaret, my old teaching friend Carol, 2 widows from church who had learned, as I had, that survival often makes better company than appearances. Lemon cake, coffee, real laughter. No one lied to me. No one used me. And somehow, that simple afternoon felt more like family than the grandest holidays I had spent pretending. That morning, before my guests arrived, I opened the drawer where I had placed Lily's adoption photo months earlier. I studied that little girl's face again. White eyes, missing tooth, hope. Then I read her note one last time. I don't expect forgiveness, but I finally understand what I destroyed. For a while, I just sat there. Because healing, I've learned, isn't about erasing betrayal. It's about deciding it no longer gets to define your ending. So I placed the photo in a new frame. Not on the mantle, not hidden away. On the bookshelf in my reading room. A quieter place. A truthful place. Because Lily was part of my life. But she would not be the author of it. A week later, she wrote again. This time from a small town 2 states away where she'd moved after the baby was born. She didn't ask for money. Or absolution. Just one sentence. He has your eyes. I cried then. Not because I wanted Daniel back. Not because I wished any of it had happened differently. But because innocence had arrived in that child despite the wreckage that created him. And I realized something unexpected. The deepest betrayal wasn't that my husband and daughter shattered my trust. It was that they mistook my love for weakness. They believed kindness meant I would keep sacrificing myself to protect their choices. They were wrong. Love without boundaries is surrender. But love with wisdom, that becomes legacy. So no, I did not raise their son. That was never my burden to carry. But on his first birthday, I mailed a small package. Inside was a children's book about honesty. And a handwritten note. You were born from painful mistakes. But your life can still be honest love, Evelyn, because pain can travel through generations. Or it can stop, with one woman willing to end it. Now, when people in Fairfield mention my story in hushed voices over lunch or charity galas, they usually get one thing wrong. They call me the woman whose husband betrayed her with her adopted daughter. But that is not who I became. I am the woman who survived betrayal without becoming bitter, who chose dignity over destruction, who protected her peace when her own family tried to steal it. And every morning, when sunlight spills across my mother's house and the coffee brews for one, I do not feel abandoned. I feel free.